Welcome to 5 Points Blues presentation of Back to the Basics. Everything you wanted to know about Cowboys football, but were too afraid to ask. Here are your hosts, Nikki Harrison and Kristi Scales.
Well, welcome. It's Tuesday. Welcome to Back to the Basics. Everything you wanted to know about Cowboys football, but we're too afraid to ask. I'm Nikki Harrison here with Kristi Scales. Well, let's get right into it. Dallas Cowboys are still going through OTAs. But you have a really cool story about
it's
OTAs.
Actually OTAs out of Kansas City. And remember that OTAs, organized team activities, are voluntary.
Right.
So if you want to miss it, you can. Mm-hmm. And this offensive lineman, a guard named Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, who's from Canada, has a good reason for missing practice today. And that's because he has getting his degree, he's already got it today, from medical school.
Really?
So he's now Duvernay-Tardif, MD. And in fact, I saw a cute story in the Kansas City Star where he said, I actually have contacted to the league to see if they'll add MD to the back of my, to my jersey, my name on the back of my Chiefs jersey. But yeah, a good player too, a starting guard. And I think he was drafted in like 2014 by Kansas City, but he played at McGill University there in Canada, and has continued going to medical school in the off season. Wow! And today walked and earned his medical degree.
Well, good for him. Congratulations.
Yeah, so it's kind of fun to share those kinds of stories. We have a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader, Kirsten, who is retiring. She's just retired. She's not coming back for the 2018 season because she's going to medical school. And we've had a couple of Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders who retired the previous off season to continue their careers as biomedical engineers. So,
I love that.
We got a lot of smart people.
Yes,
in
and
the
it
league.
just says follow your dreams.
That's exactly right.
I love
exactly
that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of OTAs, I actually have a question about OTAs from Olivia in College Station. She is asking, why was Zach Martin holding out of OTAs last week? Doesn't he have one more year on his contract?
He does have another year on his contract, and he wasn't holding out because it's voluntary. So
okay, there you go.
So technically, he was not holding out, but was he making a point about, yes, let's go ahead and get this contract extension done? Yes, absolutely. Okay. But I don't think that Olivia or any Cowboy fan needs to worry about Zach Martin's commitment to this team or being ready for the season. This is a contract extension. He's going to be the highest paid guard in the league. Wow. And that's going to be a lot of money because right now, the highest paid guard in the league is a guy who's a free agent who signed with Jacksonville, and he signed, and that's Andrew Norwell, and he signed for 5 years, $66.5 million with $30 million guaranteed. And so when you're talking about numbers that big, and Zach Martin's will surely they'll surpass Norwell's because Martin is arguably the best guard in the game, period. Also, the guaranteed money will probably be a lot higher because Norwell signed his contract before Kirk Cousins, the quarterback for the Redskins, previously signed his contract, free agent contract with the Vikings, and it's fully guaranteed. So unless you're a quarterback, you're probably not going to get fully guaranteed. But there are a lot of things to work out with Zach Martin. It will get worked out. So
those are two words that people, I'm sure, love to hear. Fully guaranteed.
Yeah, because
that's rare.
Unlike the NBA, a pro basketball player in the NBA or a Major League Baseball player, your contracts are not guaranteed.
Exactly.
Right, unless except for your signing bonus or the top players do get some guarantees in their contracts, but standard contracts, you don't get anything guaranteed except your signing bonus. Sometimes there are roster bonuses and things like that, but for the most part, if you're not on the team, you're not going to get paid.
Okay.
Yeah, you may sign a 5-year deal, but if you get injured partway through it and you don't finish your contract, then
it's not guaranteed.
Yeah,
done.
Exactly.
Okay, well, give us a call, 888-855-2297. Again, that's 888-855-2297. And also, don't forget, you can email us at 5pointsblue@dallascowboys.net. That's 5pointsblue@dallascowboys.net.
Alrighty. Yeah, we had a couple of email questions.
We did.
Okay.
We did. This one is from Brooke in Monroe, Louisiana, which isn't too far from where our quarterback, Dak Prescott, is from. He's from Houghton, Louisiana.
That's right. That's right. And Brady James, the great Cowboy linebacker from Monroe.
So thank you, Brooke. She is wondering, she says, I watched the video on Cowboys Facebook about earning the star. What does that mean, and what do they have to do?
Yes, well, the rookies out here at OTAs and in minicamp later in the month, and then through training camp out in Oxnard, California, you're not going to be a star. You're not going to see a star on the side of their helmets because they have not yet earned the star. You're not going to get the star on your helmet until you make the 53-man roster. So your vantage point looking out from your desk, watching OTAs this morning and all of last week, you could probably look out and you can tell if someone's a rookie or not even seeing their number or knowing who they are.
Well, I have to put on my glasses. I don't have binoculars, but I have to put on my glasses. I'm going to pay attention.
Yeah. Well, this is something that Coach Garrett has continued since taking over as head coach of the Cowboys, but you can trace it back to Bill Parcells in 2003. And rookies, again, it's not so much like keeping them down and putting them in their place. It's motivation, and it's knowing that star means something and working to earn it. It's just like the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. They have to earn their boots or the stars on their uniform. And it's even though Parcells did it with the Cowboys in 2003, similar things have happened. There may be some Texas Longhorn fans out there who remember about 4 years ago when Charlie Strong came in to Austin, and he had the Longhorn logo removed from all the helmets, not just the incoming freshmen, but all the players had to earn that logo. And amazing, they all did by the time the first game rolled around. No, but here's what's going to happen with the rookies. Out at training camp, they're still not going to have stars on their helmets, but for the preseason games, our equipment managers, you're going to see Dylan and Mike McCord, Bucky Buchanan, they will be feverishly working to get the decals, the star decals put on the helmets, because in a preseason game and NFL game, everybody has to be uniform, has to be the same. So they will have their stars on their helmets for the preseason game, but as soon as the game is over, and by the next time they step onto the practice field there in Oxnard, that decal will be removed.
That makes
because
sense.
They haven't earned it yet.
Gotcha. And I bet it builds a sense of pride for
it does.
them.
It does. That's one of the really cool things about here at the Star in Frisco. I'm not referring to Star on the helmet, but our new headquarters and practice facility. It's 91 acres, so it's mixed use. We've got the Omni Hotel, we've got the restaurants, the Baylor Scott and White medical wing is opening at the end of June, so there's a lot to it. The
restaurants,
Fans United
retail,
and all of that. Well, anyway, within our Cowboys part of the building, when you take the tour, you'll see so many things. You'll learn so much about the history of the game, and that includes over in the players area. So when they walk from their locker room out to the practice field, when they walk down the hallway, leaving the team meeting room to go to their specific meeting room for their position, when the offensive linemen walk to the room for the offensive line meetings, they see all of these things. It's a list of Pro Bowl players. It's Hall of Fame Cowboys. You see this great montage for each of the 5 Super Bowls that the Cowboys have won. You have the touchstone, which is the star with the quote underneath it. It is a privilege, not a right, to play, coach, and work for the Dallas Cowboys. So Coach Garrett and the Jones family have used this building to not only teach young players and to remind veteran players of the standard here. But they put all of these things out in front. So the star and the history and the legacy of the Cowboys is, you can't escape it here. And they use it not only to teach, but also as motivation.
Yeah. And it's great to see. I love it. I really do. It has built a sense of pride in me working here.
Yeah, and when you see all these people who are paying money to take a tour of your office, it's like, you're like, oh man, I've got to do this today, or oh, I got to stay late, or I got to do this. And it's like, wow, it really is a privilege to work here. There are so many people that are so excited to come see where we work and learn more about the history.
Absolutely. All righty, my next question is from Brittany in Columbus, Ohio. How many of the rookies are going to get cut?
Ooh, well, it's not just rookies who are fighting for position.
True.
Everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a 10-year veteran or 10 weeks as a rookie. Almost half the guys are going to get cut.
Because how many are out there right now?
90.
90.
That's a league rule. The maximum amount that you can have on a roster through the off season and through training camp is 90 players.
Okay.
By the time training camp ends, by the time we finish the weekend following that fourth and final preseason game,
yes,
it goes from 90 to 53.
53.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
So, and now the rule changed last year.
Okay.
In previous years, you would have different timelines for cut down. So, for example, until last year, you went from 90 players to 75 players.
Okay.
And then down to 53. There was even a time where it went from 75 to 65. But anyway, it used to be staggered. Okay. And as of last year, it's not staggered anymore. And it's after that final preseason game, the axe falls, and there are tons of free agents out there. All of these players that have gotten cut, not just rookies, but some established veterans as well.
Gotcha.
And so it is a free-for-all. I remember interviewing Will McClay, who's from our player personnel department, and a lot of you may know the name because he's intricate for the draft and everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And anyway, it's like, man, it's going to be crazy. It's like, yeah, it's going to be chaos because before, when it was staggered, we knew which players had been cut, and we had already cut some from our roster too. So you could start cherry picking who you wanted, players that had already been cut, and you could start massaging your own roster.
Yeah.
Well, now, boom. So
those guys might not be available when you're looking.
Or there's so many available now. How do you and all the teams are trying to sign them, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, if you're a rookie, let's say that, or a fifth year player, whatever. Let's just say that you are a kind of a borderline player. You know, you may or you may not make the team. You're hanging on by your fingernails to a roster spot. Well, you might survive that initial cut that weekend from 90 to 53. But now there are all these players from 31 other teams out there, and we decided, hey, we like that guy from the Chiefs, or I think that Cleveland Browns defensive back is better than the one I have here. So it actually happens pretty often where you survive the first cut that weekend, but you don't make it through the end of the coming week because they found someone from another roster that had been released.
And so that's almost like a feeding frenzy because you've got all of these players who are now trying to make other teams. And so if they don't make a team, then what? They have the potential to be on the practice squad?
Yes, that's right. Now, there are certain rules about being on the practice squad. If you have a lot of experience in the league, there are rules about your service, right? Your tenure. Okay. So if you play a certain amount of games in a certain amount of seasons, then you're not eligible to be on the practice squad. It's not that you have to be a rookie or a first-year player.
Yeah.
We had a guy, Clint Sterner, who was our third and fourth string quarterback for several years. Well, he hardly ever got to play. So even though he was like in his fourth year, he was still practice squad eligible. Okay. So there are certain rules for eligibility to the practice squad. But several years ago, the NFL expanded the number. So each team can have 10 practice squad players and for the season. So
each team can have 10.
Yes. So when we say that the roster it goes from 90 to 53, it does. That's your 53-man roster, the people that you choose from to play on Sunday. The practice squad players do not play in games. They can only practice. Right.
Okay.
So it's meant for young guys to develop them. So, for example, Rico Gathers, as a rookie, spent all year on the practice squad. Right, because he hadn't played football since junior high. He's trying to learn to be. He played college basketball, and now he's trying to learn. So someone like that is the perfect candidate for the practice squad.
Interesting.
Yeah, like would Bo Scarborough, who's our 7th round pick, the bruising runner from Alabama, if he doesn't make the 53-man roster, then he would be a great candidate for the practice squad.
Okay.
But if you cut him, then every other team gets to sign him.
Gotcha.
That's how Cooper Rush made the squad last year. Last year, our quarterback, Cooper Rush, right? He was this rookie free agent from, Central Michigan. And it's like, well, he's done well in the preseason games. If we cut him, then some other team has been watching him, and they're going to sign him. So we better keep him. Because if we cut him, someone else will sign him, and we won't be able to sign him back to our practice squad. So the Cowboys actually kept 3 quarterbacks last year. Kellen Moore, of course, Dak Prescott, and Cooper Rush.
Interesting.
So there is a lot that is going on behind the scenes. There are so many considerations that the personnel department has, that the coaches have when they make these roster decisions.
Fascinating. Okay. Now, last week, there were owners' meetings. NFL owners meetings. I know some changes came out of those meetings. Yeah. Talk a little bit about what occurred.
Well, the NFL owners took the proposals from the competition committee, which is personnel, general managers, coaches. It's this committee that considers rule changes in. They propose them to the owners, and then the owners have to vote yes or no. And they voted yes to change kickoffs.
Okay.
And the rules regarding kickoffs. Okay. And I think this is going to have a big effect. I was talking with Keith O'Quinn, who was our new special teams coordinator. He got promoted from assistant special teams coordinator to special teams coordinator, replacing Rich Bisaccia. And I also talked to Dan Bailey, our kicker, about this last week. And it literally had just come down, like that day had been approved. And so everyone's still kind of like, all right, we really haven't had meetings on this yet, but with the players, but from what we know, this is what's going to happen. Okay. So what the NFL is trying to do is reduce the number of concussions and improve player safety by changing the rules on kickoffs.
Okay.
5 times, according to NFL data, they cited this research, concussions are 5 times more likely on kickoffs than any other play in NFL football.
Because they get the opportunity to build up so much speed?
They get the opportunity to build up speed, and you have all of these massive collisions that are taking place on a kickoff return. And I'm not just talking about the little returner trying to get the ball and he gets smashed as he's running upfield. We're talking about as the kickoff, the coverage people, the ones who are running down to tackle, as they're going down full speed, the blockers are there, and it's big guys waiting to hit them, and then they clock them. So you have a high rate of speed going against big guys, and it can happen. Injuries can happen.
Okay.
So there are several things that are changed.
Okay.
And you talked about running downfield. In the past, the coverage team, the guys who are line up next to the kicker and are going to run down and make the tackle, in the past they've gotten a 5-yard head start. Okay. So that they're running downfield as the ball is kicked, so they get a running start. No more 5-yard start. They're going to have to be within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage where the ball is teed up at the 35. So they're going to be standing still and then have to run.
Wow.
They don't get a running start.
Okay.
So that's going to
slow some of that momentum down.
It's going to slow some of that momentum down, absolutely. Another thing that's going to happen is in the past, like Dan Bailey would line up to kick off. Well, so that's one player, and then you have 10 others, right?
Right.
Well, you might overload one side. You might have 6 players on one side to try and get a good matchup and flood one side of the field so that you create a mismatch and maybe get one of those guys free. Can't do that anymore. Has to be 5 on one side of the kicker and 5 on the other side of the kicker. Okay?
Yeah.
Another thing that'll happen is if the ball touches the ground, like in the end zone, you know how sometimes the ball will go and then the guy will pick it up? If the ball's down there in the end zone, it's blown dead and it's a touchback. Okay? So you can't run and pick up the ball in the end zone and then return it. If it hits the ground, then whistle blows, play is over, and the offense will get the ball at the 25-yard line. Just as a touchback. Okay?
And now, there's no points involved in that.
There's no points in a touchback. All that is saying is that the ball's going to be at the 25. It's the start line where it's going to be.
Got it.
Okay? But here's the other thing. Then this is the big change, and we're going to pull out our Explain-A-Thing.
We haven't seen this in a while.
We haven't seen the Explain-A-Thing. Oh, thank you, Douglas. Right on cue. Here's what we're talking about. So here's Dan Bailey, the kicker, and he's got 5 players on each side of him because we have to have an even number now. They have to be within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage. No more 5-yard head start. So here's our coverage, guys. But this is the big difference here. In the past, well, you have your deep guy, and then you have the ones near him. And then these 8 guys here would be kind of spaced out, right? Now the new rule is that you must have 8 men on your return team within 15 yards of here. So everybody's going to be bunched up in here.
Yes.
You can't space them out anymore. So that in the past, the Cowboys and other teams have used big linemen down here. Tyrone Crawford, who's 300 pounds, one of our biggest dudes.
For sure.
In the past, he's played down here. Malik Collins, our big defensive tackle, another big guy, defensive lineman, 300 pounds, he's down here. Well, why have you had bunches of guys, big guys down here in the past? Because you want the big guys to do blocks.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, now you can only have 3 players lined up beyond 15 yards. So you have to have 3 guys cover all of this area. You can't space out your guys anymore. Well, that means that they need to be, in Coach O'Quinn's words, ball guys, meaning running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, guys who are used to handling the ball.
Yes.
Because they could be fielding it in the air. They need to be able, more athletic guys, faster kind of thing.
Yeah.
Be able to handle the ball. Okay? The other thing that used to happen in the past is when you had your players spread out and you had big guys down here, you would have a wedge, all right? And a 2-man wedge, imagine big guys like Tyrone and Malik next to each other. Jeff Swaim, one of our big tight ends, he's done this in the past. If you and I are a wedge, Nikki, we're going to be side by side within 2 yards of each other. And as the people come down and we block them, it's going to be hard for them to get around us, right?
Correct.
And we're big guys and we could really take them out. Well, now there is no more 2-man wedge allowed. So we have to be apart.
Okay.
So it's going to be harder to block, and I maybe need to be a little bit lighter and faster than being a big guy, right?
Yes.
Slow guy.
This is going to be
for these
something
guys running.
That's going to be, I don't know, I don't want to say difficult, but that's a big change.
It's a big change. It's a huge adjustment. And here's what's going to happen. This is my prediction, and Coach O'Quinn agrees with me, and so did Dan Bailey. It's kind of like, I see this happening. What do you think? And they're like, yeah, I agree with that too. You know how when we talk about the guys who get cut, when coaches are trying to decide who these backup guys that are going to be on the team, well, if you're a backup guy, you better be able to play special teams, right? You have a lot of linebackers. You have a lot of defensive backs that play special teams because they can run down the field. They can block and run and tackle or, touch the ball if they have to. Well, are you going to have to sacrifice some of your bigger guys, your bigger linemen, to go with more athletic kind of guys like this? If you can't use those big guys in certain parts of special teams,
right,
it could change the composition of your entire roster.
Right.
Because when we get to the point where they're making the decisions of 90 when you're cutting from 90 to 53, like we were talking about earlier, and man, should we keep an extra defensive back, or do we need a 9th or 10th offensive lineman? Yeah, do we need 4 tight ends or 3 tight ends? Do we need 6 wide receivers or 5 wide receivers? Well, when these guys may be wide receivers or a running back or a tight end, someone with ball skills or an athleticism like Byron Jones, somebody like that, then ultimately this rules change affecting kickoff could change the way that coaches make up their rosters.
Now, the committee, what are they called again?
The competition committee.
The competition committee. What type of people are on this committee?
There's some general manager. Stephen Jones, for the Cowboys, executive vice president and director of player personnel, has been on the competition committee for several years. It is a big honor to be on the competition committee because guys making rule changes and things like that. But, I think the general manager previously from the Falcons has been on it. Jeff Fisher for many, many years, who was the head coach of the Titans and then the Rams. He was on it for many years. Mike Tomlin, the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach, I believe, is on the competition committee.
So it's people that are very close to the game.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And one
thing,
thing,
I only ask that because I'm like, since it changes so much, do they take that into consideration?
They do, and all of these rule changes. Remember a couple years ago, when they changed the extra point, instead of snapping the ball from the 2-yard line and kicking it from the 10 and it being an easy 20-yarder, and they move it back and now it's a 35-yard one to kick an extra point?
Yes.
That goes through the competition committee.
Okay.
And what was really interesting about this one with the kickoff changes is they pulled in special teams coaches, past and present, to consult with them.
Okay.
And it's like, hey, we're thinking of these changes. What do you think about this? So at least they got some input from special teams, because generally special teams is, shall we say, underrepresented and certainly underappreciated by fans and media. But special teams is anything with the kicking game. So it's kickoffs, it's punt returns, it's field goals and extra points.
Yes.
And when you talk about football, you say there are 3 facets. There's offense, there's defense, and there's special teams. And you may only have 10 or 12, maybe 15 special teams plays a game, but it's hugely important, because even though it may not be a field goal that's worth 3 points, field position, right? Punts, kickoffs. And here's the thing, talking with Dan Bailey and with Keith O'Quinn, our new coordinator, about this, these guys up here, this is really, the kickoffs are now going to be more like a punt. And by that I mean the kicking team or the punting team, they don't get a head start, right? They have to be now within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage. And then these guys up here, they're going to be closer. They have to be within 15 yards. So these guys are going to have to be able to run down the field side by side and then get down and try and make a block, kind of steer them a different direction so that your returner can make a play. So it's really going to change not just these guys back here, but these guys are going to have speed, be very athletics and versatility. So it's really going to resemble more of a punt in terms of how the return team must cover the kicking team.
Gotcha. That'll be
Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Absolutely.
So I know that we've spent a lot of time talking about these changes in the kickoffs, but it's going to be very, very important. And it's going to be some things that you may not really notice it in preseason, and we're not going to be talking about it that much in preseason, because in preseason, you're talking about who's going to make the team and all that kind of stuff. But I think this is a really big change that's coming in football. It's one way that they're trying to reduce concussions and make the game safer, and everybody is for that. Dan Bailey says, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I'm for it. If guys can play longer and it's a safer game, then we should do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But again,
It'll be a learning curve.
It's a learning curve, and OTAs had already started for all NFL teams.
Right.
And then it's just a timing issue of when the owners' meeting was taking place. But now Keith O'Quinn, he gets promoted from assistant to coordinator. And hey, welcome, Keith. Now we've changed the rules, so have fun with that, buddy.
That's funny. Was there anything else significant on the field, playing-wise, that happened in the owners' meetings?
Well, let's see. The biggest thing was the kickoffs out of everything, and then they awarded a couple of the Super Bowls. They awarded one to Glendale, Arizona, and where was the other one? Douglas, was it New Orleans that got the other one? I think it was New Orleans.
You mean
not catch that?
Yeah, for the upcoming Super Bowls that were awarded last week.
The locations.
The locations went to Glendale and I believe to New Orleans.
Fun.
And then they approved, and I think we mentioned this last week, they approved the 2019 draft to take place in Nashville.
That is really cool.
Yeah, so
really cool.
sometimes most of the time the stuff at the owners meeting is business related, things kind of like that. But this was they had already changed some rules earlier in owners meetings, but the kickoff were the big ones this year.
And correct me, they meet more than once, correct?
Yeah, this was the spring meetings, and usually the winter ones is where a lot of the big news takes place. And so if the rules changes aren't approved by that one, then they get kind of pushed back and can be changed in the spring. And just because the competition committee proposes something doesn't mean that it's going to be rubber stamped by the NFL. There can be, it doesn't have to be approved, or it can be by razor thin margins, or they may table it. This particular one, just like the changing the extra point, they're going to do this for a year, and then next year they're going to revote.
To see
and
how
say,
it
okay,
went.
we're going to.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Very good. All right.
Yeah, but the fact that they have done this, it's another step towards player safety, and again, it could have a big impact into the future.
That's huge. That's huge. Well, our time is up. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back next week right here on 5 Points Blue.
This has been a production of 5 Points Blue, DallasCowboys.com, and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!